walk by, I let go again. 'Cause what passes by, we have to be just friends. I take the boxes with shaky hands. They want to use my identity for their brand. And look at tormenting broken skin. Locked doors from grandparents for my so-called sin. My story insignificant in comparison to some, 'cause at least this time there were no guns. And I won't go blindfolded to the multitude of lies, to the one night only corporate sponsored idea of pride. While I watch my friends and parents' children getting harassed on the streets. But you can buy a rainbow-coloured packet of sweets. They'll put you on TV, yeah, but you're always the best friend. In an advert for a second, but you're in a tinted, blurry lens. And the man on the street looks at my love, then he looks at me, as if we're figments of a browser history. And I won't go blindfolded to the multitude of lies, to the one night only corporate sponsored idea of pride. While I watch my friends and parents' children getting harassed on our streets. But you can buy a rainbow-coloured packet of sweets. As you walk by, I let go again. 'Cause what passes by, we have to be just friends. I take the boxes with shaky hands, as if I'm just a brand. Thank you.
And welcome. Thank you so much for joining us here this afternoon at our fantastic event that we have lined up for you, which has been brilliantly opened by the fantastic Maddie Morris. Thank you so much for being here. This is part of our social media takeover, along with our fantastic friends at the F List, and you can find all of that information if you're not already watching us on the Instagram channel. You can find that through either the Leeds Conservatoire Instagram socials or indeed the F List socials, and you can find out more about what's happening over this whole week. 3.5 years ago, I was asked as my first job here at the Conservatoire to sit on a panel of really fantastic women to talk about the launch of something called the Elevate Initiative. And the Elevate Initiative was about creating spaces and creating a sense that we could promote and inspire and motivate and support women across the whole of the Conservatoire and indeed the whole of the music and performing arts industry. And I remember one of the best things about that was knowing that I was joining an organisation that was thinking about this as a really serious challenge and was thinking about what we could do in our community to make sure that our staff and students feel visible as part of who we are and what we want to do in the future. And as part of that initiative, we've done a range of different things, many different activities. If you've been here in the building and been on the 4th floor, you'll see many of the women from across the Conservatoire staring at you out from the walls as part of the photography exhibition. And there was a number of different performances that we had, female showcases that we did in collaboration with the SU at the time. We also, as an organisation, have had other kinds of cultural changes. We have changed in terms of what we think about the EDI Change project, for example, and really thinking about women and gender as part of that conversation and how we at the Conservatoire can open up that conversation. We've also got our first ever diversity officer for women, Lucy, who's going to be presenting our panel here today, as well as a number of different initiatives, but always thinking about us as an organisation being able to learn and grow and improve for the better and the impact that we can make on the music and arts industry and beyond. So I'm thrilled to have this opportunity to stand 3.5 years later to really take the time to reflect on what's happened and also introduce these amazing panellists who have joined us today to talk to us about what we do in the future, not only of the Conservatoire, but also as we go out and we spread music and theatre and art around. So it is my pleasure to introduce Lucy and Alicia, who are going to be presenting today's panel event. A big thank you to Nikki, to Holly, to NikNak, to Lara, to Testament, and to Maddie, who are going to be joining us. And I really hope that you enjoy it. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that, Patsy. So firstly, I thought it'd be really great if you could just introduce yourselves, your work and what you do, just so our audience can get to know you a little bit. So I think maybe if we can just sort of go this way along down the line, if you could just tell us a little bit about your careers and who you are.
Sure. Hi, I'm Nikki Yeoh, jazz pianist, composer, band leader and educator. I've been lecturing at Leeds Conservatoire since the beginning of last semester, so this year.
Good. I'm Holly. I go by the name of Gnasha, dubstep DJ, producer, and I also educate people on doing the same thing.
I'm NikNak. I'm also a DJ, turntablist, radio presenter, producer, composer. I do more things that escape me now, but I do quite a lot of stuff in music.
Wicked. Yeah, I'm Lara. I was a student here. I studied jazz saxophone, and then since I've not played that much jazz saxophone. A composer. I produce a lot of my own work now, and I play in a band called J Frisco.
Yeah, my name's Testament. I am a rapper, beatboxer, composer, and theatre writer, playwright person.
Yeah, I'm Maddie. I'm a folk musician and do music around activism and kind of opening discussions about things. Yeah.
I'm sure you have to start with the questions. Holly, the first one's for you. So, am I right in saying you were born and raised in Leeds?
Yeah, I'm from Leeds.
Yeah.
Still here. They can't get rid of me.
And you teach here at the Conservatoire?
Yeah, which came out of the blue. But it's going well, so.
And do you think that teaching other people has an effect on your own music?
I mean, it's good to hear what other people are also making, and also learning from them, and vice versa, I suppose. But yeah, they're like ways of making music. I try and like kind of take that on board as well.
I was wondering as well, is there anything particularly exciting about the electronic music scene in Leeds?
Yeah, there's a lot going on, so whatever you're really into, there's probably something at least that will touch on that or kind of delve into that kind of music. Obviously we've got like the old Red Bus Station, which is predominantly like a electronic music venue. Then other venues like Hi-Fi, Freedom Mills, really pushing it. So, yeah, it's good.
Cool. Thank you. So, NikNak, I have a question for you.
Okay.
Which is that something I find really interesting about your work is that, as you've just mentioned, it seems to span so many different forms. You do so many different things. And I was wondering how do you find it working in so many different fields, and how does your art translate from one form to another?
It's a lot of juggling and kind of like, what is my calendar looking like, and like diligently checking in case there's been any changes and stuff. But yeah, I think the way that like my brain is like, I love to do editing of sound, and I also want to run stuff, or like if I haven't seen a particular, I don't know, event, for example, that really, like, for example, showcases non-male artists, then it's like, can I do that? Do I have the capacity to do that? All right, I'll give it a go. So it kind of just helps to kind of spark up conversations and opportunities for other people, as well as just helping me figure out, like, oh, well, maybe I could do that again, or stuff. And the way that my career has kind of gone into new realms as well that I never really saw coming has been a really lovely surprise in like recent years. So yeah, there's a lot of like that, but like it's all right.
Can you tell us any more about the sort of different realms that your career's gone into that you weren't really expecting?
So in recent years, like, I was a presenter on BBC Radio Leeds, which was random but really cool, and that's led to me now presenting and producing show on Worldwide FM and other such like places, as well as randomly ending up doing theatre compositions and sound design and stuff for theatre shows, which again was like the most random emails, but it's like cool. I can actually do that, and it means exercising skills that I haven't really, not to say I haven't used before, but not used in a long time. So it's nice to kind of bring that back and kind of refresh my mind on that stuff.
Amazing, thank you so much. So Lara, I know that as part of your band that you mentioned, J Frisco, you deliver workshops in the hope of inspiring young women. I watched a clip on the J Frisco website from Jazz Camp for Girls, and it was honestly just beautiful, like seeing all these young girls just like jamming out, having loads of fun with music. So I was wondering if you could tell us a bit more about those workshops, like what have the responses been?
Yeah, so they've run for quite a few years now. So the project was set up by Jazz North. It's called Jazz Camp for Girls, and there's a few different partners involved, and J Frisco was one of them. So the first one we ran was at Huddersfield University. I think that's where that clip came from. I think the first one, there was something really special about it, because at the time, for us in the North, we couldn't really see anything else quite like it happening, and it was targeted at a specific age group. I think it's 9 to 16. But forgive me, Jazz North, I'm getting that wrong. But yeah, it was really beautiful, and you know, our role in it was rather than teaching jazz in kind of a way of, you know, we're going to look at the chords and we're going to look at what we can play over these chords in kind of more of a traditional way. It was just about getting everyone playing together. So we're improvisers. We just love to get in a room and just play what we feel. So we always start our workshops by just listening to music, asking everyone in the room what are they listening to, and then like drawing on, you know, anything from like a metal track to a pop track, whatever, and you know, take influence from that and then put it into our own composition. And yeah, it's really beautiful. The past few years it's been online, so it's been done on Zoom, which was interesting as well. So we changed it to be looking at like graphic scores. So we got any participant involved to sort of draw different shapes and then think about how those shapes might sound, how the colours might sound, and then piece it together. And in the end, we ended up with these beautiful scores that J Frisco would like to perform at some point. So yeah, it's running again this year as well, although I don't know much of the details. But I'm sure if you go on like the Jazz North website, then you know people can check it out. So yeah, it's really, really good.
I think that's so amazing. I think it's such a great way to get young girls that might not otherwise have a chance to be involved in jazz music, involved in jazz music.
Yeah.
You know, sort of what did they say? Like, did they love it? I bet they did.
Yeah, they definitely really loved it. Yeah, I think it was interesting as well because it was pulling people together that haven't played together before. So I remember in the last one that we ran on Zoom, it was really interesting because there's the chat function, so you can really get a sense of how people are feeling. And they were all they wanted to link up outside of the sessions and form their own bands. And, because for a lot of people, they might not have played in a space that was without males before. So I think that was really special, and all the tutors involved as well. To see women up there doing it, I think that was powerful for them. So it's been great. And then JFISCO, we've done some other workshops as well. Sort of outside of that, it's a lot of what JFISCO are about. We're 3 women, so can't help but represent.
Amazing, thank you.
Continuing with the jazz, Nikki, my question. So we've both read the article from JazzWise where you kind of talk about how you've been influenced by so many of your mentors and the people around you, and it's really inspiring to see how you've engaged with everyone that you've worked with. So the question is, how would you recommend that students make the most out of their tutors and their mentors, people who often have had, years worth of experience and life experience as well, not just in the industry?
It's a great question. I think we can learn from anybody, and myself as a lecturer, I learn from my students too, as long as you're open to learning. And every single situation, whether or not you agree with that lecturer or you agree with that student, there's always something to be gained. So I think my advice would be to all students, go to every single class that's on offer to you. And I know there's some people might think, I'm not feeling that teacher, I'm just going to skip it. But I'd say as an actual intellectual quest, and also as a musical and artistic quest, discover what is it about that teacher or that selection of music that you don't like, and try to find something in it that you do like. And you might come up with something completely different to all of it, but then that on its own is actually a great find. So never stop searching. Everything's always a challenge, and that means that if you're being challenged, you're coming out of your comfort zone. And if you're coming out of your comfort zone, that's going to feel by nature uncomfortable, and that means you're being stretched and you're growing. Ultimately, the time that you're here is a time of growth, and if you resist that pushing of growing, then you're going to be stuck in the place that you were when you arrived. So embrace it, and you're going to become a much better musician by the time you leave, which is ultimately what we all want.
Yeah, agreed. Yeah.
I think that's kind of just made me think about, I think a lot of us in the music industry and performing arts industry are sort of perfectionists, and we sort of are scared of making mistakes, and I think sometimes that holds people back from going outside of their comfort zone. And I was wondering if you had any advice on getting over that fear of making mistakes and that kind of perfectionism.
Absolutely. I mean, when I was about 17, 18, I went to a jam session at the Jazz Cafe in London, and there Courtney Pine was on stage. It was like a whole host of incredible musicians. Courtney Pine, Lonnie Plaxico from the M-Bass Collective, Steve Williamson. It was just amazing. All of the heads were up there. And Gary Crosby from Tomorrow's Warriors. Wasn't Tomorrow's Warriors at the time. It was pre-Tomorrow's Warriors. That's just how old I am. But he came up to the mic and he was like, look, our piano players had a fit of nerves. Is there anybody in the audience who would like to step up and play? And all my mates were going, yeah, go on. And up until then, my sort of exploration was like with my mates at sixth form, going to the porter cabin where there's a piano, practicing at lunchtime. And I thought, no, I'm not ready for this. They kind of was like, go. And anyway, just before they were about to play, I went to the piano player, who was Trevor Watkis, who's a house pianist at the time. I said, excuse me, do you mind if I sit in? And I sat in. And all that time, Courtney was looking at me over these pair of shades, giving me this look, and I thought he's going to tell me to give up because I didn't believe in myself. I was out of my comfort zone, right? And I felt challenged and scared, absolutely terrified. And I was pretty much the only woman in the whole place because jazz was so male dominated back in the day. I'm talking 91, 92. And so
Anyway, at the end, I'm walking out with my mates. I'm like, oh, man, that was terrible. Even though the audience were like, yeah, it was great. I was like, they're just clapping for the novelty factor. Yeah, whatever. You know, an unlimited amount of self-doubt. And Gary Crosby tapped me on the shoulder and he was like, hey, Nikki, he said, can we go upstairs because Courtney wants to say hello to you? And I was like, oh, man, he's going to tell me to give up. So I went upstairs and he said to me, the first thing, I'll never forget, he said, where are you coming from? I was like, Islington. And he's like, no, creatively. Like, he didn't even really clarify it, but I kind of, years later, got what he was saying. And anyway, from then, about a month or two later, he called me. He called my house phone. Mum picked up the phone. He said, it's Courtney Pine. Mum slashed down the phone. She's like, somebody's winding us up. Put the phone down. Phone back again. He's like, no, it really is Courtney Pine. And asked me to go on the road with him. So I was like, no. Yeah, it was a month after my 19th birthday.
Sorry.
And that's how I was feeling at the time, right? I was just like, what? Are you kidding me? So, and then that just kicked off my career. Then a year later, I'm on tour with Nana Cherry, and then The Roots. I was part of The Roots. So it's just like from taking that one leap of faith and literally leaping on top of the stage, on the piano, throwing all cautions to the wind, suddenly the world opened up to me. Now, there's no guarantee that's going to happen every time, but what happens if you don't take that leap is those opportunities will never present themselves. So you might have to leap 1 time, 10 times, 100 times, but eventually there's going to be that trampoline that catches you and propels you off to somewhere else. So feel the fear and do it anyway. There's a book about that. But you can just believe it and just do it. Don't have to read the book.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that is incredible. That is amazing advice. Thank you so much for sharing.
Cool.
Testament. I think a question people ask a lot is, how do you balance work and home? Which is a great question. But for me, I feel it implies kind of a level of separation. And I listened to Daughter, your BBC4 audio drama, which was amazing. And I was wondering if you could tell us a bit about sort of combining those things, because it's a really moving story about family. And I wondered sort of how much of a personal connection there was and sort of how it felt to produce work about something like that.
Yeah, since my daughter arrived, or since becoming a father, whatever, everything, it informs everything that I do. Sometimes really practically, like it's really hard. So sometimes, there was a project I worked on last year where there wasn't enough hours in the day, so I had to pull some all-nighters. But it worked out, thankfully. Doing the school run in the morning when you haven't actually gone to bed, it's a long thing. But so that's hard. I mean, even today, like after this, I do the school run. So if I jump through the window at 3:30, that's why. But it totally rewired my brain. I was chatting to Lara previously about how having a child in your life all of a sudden makes you really super focused. So instead of being on 20 projects now I'm on 10 probably, but less. But the ones that I really like, and other things just tend to fall away because they have to. I remember I did a gig with Jean Toussaint, the saxophone player. He's just done. It was very, very kind to me. And I said, how you do, like, we're playing all around the Northern Ireland and all this. I'm like, you got 3 kids. I've now got 3 kids. And I said to him, how does that work? And he just pulled down his glasses and said, you'll figure it out, son. You'll figure it out, in his voice. And I was like, okay. And it has been a figuring out, and there's been a lot of mistakes. And as a partner, actually, you know what? The biggest thing is that I can have a flop of an album or a flop of radio drama, but I don't want my children's to flop. You know what I'm saying? So, So I think that's a key thing. And with the daughter was a pleasure. So that was a pleasure. I mean, the whole play is soundtracked by beatboxing, basically, in human voice. Apart from the end, as you probably know, because the last 45 seconds is my daughter. And she smashed it. I'm super proud. But that literally did become part of the logistics of what it is as well. So, I think it's about priorities and yeah, that sort of stuff. So it's actually probably made me more productive, but more tired.
Thanks. Because I suppose, obviously, you've only got your hours in the day that you're able to work. It means that you can really focus on projects that are really valuable and really creatively rewarding. And I was sort of wondering, is there anything you've done recently that you have found really, really rewarding?
Rare. That's interesting. There's a weird noise they add, which is like an alarm going off in the background. So I'm not sure what that is. It could be the BS alarm, and I'm not talking properly or something like that. I'm not talking knowledge. I don't know. Like I only really sign up for things now that I believe in, or pay a lot of money. So like, you know, doing 2 minutes for a random advert, like as long as the company isn't literally killing people and doing dodgy things, like, okay, that will pay for that nappies for that month. Or it's something that I'm totally like I've been in this building recently working on a musical about Shirley Chisholm, so a black feminist musical. I'm like, how can I support that? Yes, you can have my blood donation for that. So like, well, it's not done yet, but like already it's like, like the spirit of it is just edifying, just to be in the room thinking about them things. Like, yeah, I'll sign up. You can pay me 2p, I'll do it. You know what I mean?
Thank you. Maddie, a question for you.
Yes.
So your music was awarded the BBC Radio 2 Young Folk Award before you graduated. Leeds Conservatoire, yes. That's amazing. And I was wondering if you could tell us a little bit about that whole experience and how it felt, you know, with the award and everything.
Yeah, I think it was quite a interesting experience. I think so. The folk world, or the traditional folk world, is one that I'm very passionate about and sort of very in love with in a lot of ways. But there sometimes feels like there's a little bit of almost as if you have to do one or the other. You can either do traditional music or you can do protest music, and that was something that I very much felt when I was kind of sort of at the beginning of my sort of folky career. And for a long time, I kind of felt like I had to drop the political music and kind of drop, I guess, and it's something that a lot of us experience, either as women or if we're queer, or you know, if we have any of these kind of marginalised identities, is that just by existing, we feel as if we're political, we're our political identity, and that's something I really felt. And I went to when I was offered to be part of it, and it's like a programme, runs like a couple of days. And I very much had this sense that to be successful, I had to drop the politics, and it was something that I was prepared to do in the hope that would be able to sort of progress my career in the traditional folk scene. And it came to about a week beforehand, and I'd written this song. It was in 2019, kind of when Me Too was very, you know, was being seen a lot, and I was seeing a lot of it. And I wrote a song about the Me Too movement, and I remember speaking with actually my one-to-one here and being like, that's the song I want to sing, and that's the song that I think will have the biggest impact. Even and to me it felt like I was like, okay, I'm probably not going to do very well in this competition, but I really feel like it's so important that I am able to say these things, because I'm going to have an opportunity to say it in front of more people than I usually would. And then I won, and I was really shocked and surprised. But I think for me as an experience, it was a real affirmation that actually that the folk scene is changing and that the folk scene wants to see change. And I think from there, in terms of like my career and my work as a songwriter and as a musician, it's given me this freedom to be able to create the music that I want to create. But also what was really again, affirming about the experience was knowing that even in this kind of very formal traditional folk atmosphere, that actually people want to hear that. And I think it's very easy to get very, you know, in your own head about the industry that you work in. So it was kind of a weird experience from a sort of for me as from a perspective of like personal identity. But like a really cool thing. So I'm really glad I did it. It was great.
Yeah.
I know you just sort of mentioned a little bit, but I was wondering if you could tell us about the influences behind your music. I'm really interested in the political side of what you do, and I was wondering if you could speak a little bit about that.
Yeah, definitely. So I think when I was at school, I was really into second wave feminism and researching second wave feminism and stuff like that. And there's a rallying cry, which is the personal is political, which is basically the idea that sort of before second wave feminism, women's lives weren't seen as having merit in terms of things like being mothers or cleaning or whatever, whatever it was. And actually, second wave feminism was very much, for me, my understanding of this idea that actually our lived experiences are just as political as, going out and picketing. And so that was kind of where my music came from. And I think as well, I started gigging sort of, I'm from Bedfordshire. I started gigging sort of in little pubs and stuff, and very quickly was told that I wrote political music. And I look back now and I don't think I was. I think I was just, like gay. And so the interpretation would be if someone who's gay writes a song about someone of the same gender, that's a political statement. So I felt like I'd kind of fallen into political music. But then when I started getting really into this, like, the person was political, that became a really affirming thing for me, which was actually there are conversations that we're kind of encouraged not to have, I think, and conversations that make people uncomfortable. And I guess I kind of found my little, place in that in terms of songwriting. And in terms of influence, in terms of specific artists and musicians and stuff, it wasn't just about finding singers and performers that kind of did that, but also just finding activists who were speaking about things that weren't being spoken about. And I think for me it's a really wonderful kind of cathartic experience to be a political musician, because more often than not I feel like I do gigs and then I have conversations with really, really cool people who share that experience. And I think that's something that, as a queer person or as a person with, disabilities or whatever it is, it can feel very isolating. And I think my sort of main goal is so that these conversations can be had, and if I, to kind of create a pathway to that, I guess. So that was a very long answer for quite a simple question, so I apologise for that.
No, that was brilliant, and it's kind of led me on to the question that I've decided I would like to ask next, because it just seems to really make sense with what you were saying. And I'd like to open this up to everybody. But why do you think it's so important to talk about diversity and inclusion in the music industry, and why is it so important now? So that's for anybody.
Got a little input. I just think it's important because, like, it makes, like, the whole industry feel a bit more approachable. I feel like a lot of people can be put off, especially nowadays, because they're worried about what other people think, especially with social media and all the likes of that. So I think pushing the narrative that it is approachable and people are able to do it, even if it's seen not as the norm or whatever, maybe changing the norm a little bit. So yeah, don't put people off, basically.
Yeah, absolutely, because I wonder how many sort of young girls or young queer people are out there that would love to be involved in the music industry but don't feel welcome. I mean, have any of you sort of had any experiences when you were younger that really made you feel invited into the music industry?
Yeah, it's been a weird. I've always been like a self-starter, I guess. So I was kind of like, well, I'll just do it. And I kind of got support from a lot of people who could recognise that I was very serious about what I do. This is kind of more towards like the producing and DJing side of things. So like I think during my first year in my undergrad, which was in DMU, shout out to Leicester, I was working in a bar and I was like, I'd like to DJ, and they were like, oh, okay, cool, and they let me come through and do that, and that soon led to me running an event at that bar, and then soon I didn't even need to work behind the bar anymore. I was just a promoter and a DJ there instead, and then that led to other gigs and other gigs and other gigs. So the support has been there from time, and I think kind of going off of what you just said as well, like there's a real need to have that kind of visibility of like, oh, somebody that looks like me or identifies in the same way as me is doing that. That's cool. I feel like the more that that is becoming more prominent and we're having these conversations and making these changes, the more kind of calmer it can feel when it comes to, I just want to make something that's weird. And then knowing that other people are making it, it's like, oh, okay, I can do that without any kind of hesitancy or, you know, you taking your time. So, yeah, it's very important.
Yeah, a couple of things. I mean, I've been professional, meaning like, you know, properly being paid to do stuff for 30 years now. So I think I've seen quite a big shift in the industry. I thought I'd seen quite a big shift in the industry, but there's several things along the way that have made me realise that really we've not moved that far. So, you know, when I first started out, pretty much I'm always going to be the only woman in the band. And I was always pretty much the youngest one. Obviously, that's not anymore. I'm still the only woman, but I'm not the youngest one. But no, there's a lot more women that are playing jazz, a lot more women that are promoting jazz, a lot more women that are teaching jazz, but there's still not enough, you know, for me. It's not 50-50. And also there's not enough women signing up to do jazz courses and jazz degree level courses. A situation happened recently that really, there was two things. I was sitting on a panel similar to this for Royal Festival Hall, and we were talking about women in jazz. And I firstly was like, you know, I'm really getting fed up with that term, because women in jazz is just assuming that jazz has a gender. You know, jazz is not a male thing, right? So if we say women in jazz, it's like we're imposters already. So let's try and find a different term for that. But don't get me wrong, those the same challenges that are faced for women in jazz still need to be addressed. And then I had a situation recently where I'm in a position where my equal in the room is a male person. And a student walked in and didn't address me at all, and only addressed my male colleague. And we were having a discussion, and the student, who is a boy, male, boy over the age of 18, this man, right? Yeah. Okay. Right, so, this is a man. He's a man. Old enough to know better. But he mentioned something about a bass player, and he said, "Oh, if he was to take the bass line about," I said, "or she." And then he said, he was like, yeah, okay, yeah, sorry. Like, almost like, sorry, love, like, get off your high horse. And I was like, okay, just because I surround myself with really open-minded people that don't have those, you know, problems of like, we don't, you know, all my mates and all of my colleagues, we don't care where you're from, who you identify as, we're just open, just bring it all on. It's all about the music, it's all about the art. There are still some people out there who just don't get it. So, you know, to be visible in or either on stage or behind the scenes or within an educational institution or whatever it is, just talking about it is still super important, and we need to support each other, because we can't do this all on our own. Otherwise, it's not going to move anywhere. So, yeah, more of this, more talking and more illuminating and elevating the whole situation.
I think that's just going off that point. I think it's really interesting because I can see parallels between production and jazz there, and that, you know, the term female producer is thrown around quite a lot, and it's like, well, why do you have to, you know, put my gender in front of it? I'm just as capable as anyone else, you know.
Yeah, people refer to me as a female composer, and I'm like, okay, does that mean that, you know, I'm like Beethoven in dress, you know? You know? Yeah, sorry.
No, it's a really important point, because I think to have panels like this and to bring awareness to the fact that people do brush it off, and, you know, obviously we're addressing it now, but it becomes a very hard thing to address when you get people just going, yeah, you know, I hear what you're saying, but I'm not really paying attention to that specific point there. And so I think it's good just to address that and like say, you know what, we are going to stand up to it. We're not going to just let you call us whatever.
Because it has a knock-on effect, you know, like
does, yeah.
this guy who only would I think of a bass player, and he would think bass players are all men. There are no female bass players, right? There are no women that play bass, right? So who's he going to call when he's got his band together? When he's got his main gig at Ronnie Scott's, who's he going to phone up? He's going to call his boy mates. He's not even going to think about calling like amazing bass players like Charlie Pinkstone, who's incredible. What do you think of it? Because in his mind, that doesn't fit what he has. So, you know, it needs to start from a really young age. Like you going into the jazz camp for girls, fantastic, because then already it's open, it's on the table, it's a possibility.
Yeah. I just say on that as well, like, I think I was coming up at a time where really for me, like, these conversations, like, since graduating, I feel like I've been on so many panels talking about women in jazz or women in the music industry, and it's so solid and it's so important. But I think alongside that, there's got to be people listening and there's got to be people making action, because I think we all know what the situation is. Like, we live it or we see it secondhand or whatever it is. Like, we ain't trying to change our minds about nothing. So I think it's about how we're going to change those people's minds who aren't listening, who are calling the boys up, and who are, you know, putting female in front of sax players' names and producers' names and DJs' all of that. Like, they're the people that got to change, and I think that's just worth mentioning, because we know where we're at. We live it all the time, and I think these conversations are so important. But what then needs to happen is follow up, and that action needs to take place. And I see, it's called Leeds Conservatoire now, is it? It was Elcom, Leeds, whatever it is. Leeds Conservatoire now, yeah? I see, like, change is happening here. Like, I remember studying here, and we didn't have any women teaching us jazz. And there was a couple of people, in fairness, but I personally wasn't taught by any of them. And for the sax players, all the sax teachers, they were men. And, like, yeah, I found that really hard, actually, you know. Right. And I see places like this, they are listening and they are making change, and I can see that happening. But it's other places need to do the same thing.
Agreed, 100%.
Do you know what I'm saying here?
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, just yeah. Yeah, I think part of the problem is, I think so often misogyny is framed as a women's issue, and it's very much a men's issue.
It's a people issue.
Yeah, it's an everyone issue. And, you know, we're sort of left to fix problems that we didn't make, that other people have made for us. And, yeah, I think it's sort of getting through to those people that don't think how all of us think. And I was sort of wondering if anybody had any ideas or anything they wanted to say about what we can do at sort of a higher education level to make higher education music courses more accessible for women, for people with marginalised identities. Like, how can we actually invite more people into this space?
Yeah, we'll keep getting people like Nikki to teach her, innit? You know what I'm saying?
Thank you. Yeah. That's really nice. Yeah, I mean, I sort of see that there's loads of girls in my Camden and Islington jazz groups that I lead. At secondary school age is more 50-50, and it's just getting those women, those young women, to apply for the conservatoire, for the degree courses. That's just the one thing we need to just harness those.
Yeah, there's an interesting point, isn't there, that I think it changes, and I think it happens. There's 2 points. There's primary school to secondary school, and that's what the jazz camping goes. That's the target age for that. And then it's again secondary school to university, conservatoire level, you know, whatever you want to call it. I think it's that point, isn't it, where we lose people, and you know, girls, women, you know, non-males, they drop off. And yeah, I think the more that we see, like you were saying, we see people that look like ourselves teaching and on the course, performing, you know, and it's everything as well. It's not just seeing, like, non-males on stages, it's having non-males do the reviews, having non-males, you know, as it's a whole industry. And I think there's definitely a focus and a push of, like, oh well, if we just like put like a woman on the stage, then like we fix the problem. But it's much wider than that. Who's doing the promoting? Who's running the venue? You know, how safe is it? How, you know, it's bigger, it's wider than I think sometimes how, like, the women in music, like, narrative goes. Without being negative, is, you know, it's a very positive thing. But I think, you know, we're learning more and more about it, and I think that it's wider maybe than.
No, yeah, I totally agree. And there's also like you have initiatives like Key Change and Power Up and like these kind of organizations that are helping to kind of bolster these conversations and bolster like these issues like to get sorted out. But it's on the kind of ground level first off as well, because I think it's very it can feel very daunting to be like, oh, I'm going to apply to a conservatoire. That's a French word. Like that makes it seem way more like, you know, so it's for the I know we've been speaking a lot about jazz and stuff, but like for the people that want to take on the kind of more like technical approaches, like say the producers, the engineers, you know, people of that front, or even people that want to make new and wonderful instruments to use, there also needs to be that, you know, I think was it Imogen Heap who made the gloves, and it's like, what is that? But like that in itself speaks volumes, you know, and having that trickle down into primary school or secondary and vice versa, it's all really really important, because I still don't like saying that I still haven't seen someone who looks like me do what I do. And it's like, I've been doing this for a while now, so it's like, bro, what's going on? Like, it's like, I'm sure I can't be the only one, and if it is, then wow, that's weird. But I'm out here doing it, and you know, removing the whole like female insert role, or you know, just gender insert role, like that whole thing immediately adds a weird separation when it's like, I'm doing the same thing as my male counterparts. I'm just doing it in my way. Or, you know, I produce music in my way, I compose music in my way. Like, that doesn't make me any less of that title as, say, a male counterpart. Yeah. So I think removing that weird stigma around it as well will play a very vital role when it comes to, like, this is what a producer does, and here are examples, and so on and so forth.
We definitely need to take the gender out of all of that, because I know that, I'm sure you get it as well, NikNak, that people will come and say that there is a female producer out there. They say, oh, do you like whoever that is? Like people say, oh, do you like Jerry Allen or do you like Alice Coltrane? I'm like, yes. But because I'm a woman and I play jazz, doesn't mean that I only like other women jazz pianists. It's like, I also love McCoy Tyner. I also love Keith Jarrett, you know. So it's do you get that too?
I get it's in the sense of like, sort of, it's kind of a weird pigeonholing sometimes that I've had to kind of politely say, don't do that. Just like, for example, you've been tagged in I've been tagged in a post that people are looking for female DJs. I'm like, well, I'm a DJ. Right. Female turntable, I'm a turntablist. Let's like, you know, there are events that often get put on where it's like, it's an all-female DJ lineup, and I'm like, I often make the joke of like, yeah, but like when it's a whole bunch of men on there, nobody talks about like, oh, this is a penis frenzy, you know, all the DJs are penises, you know, let's go, yes, like check your things, like whatever. It's like, it's not, you don't do that. So why is there such a focus on everyone that is not identifying as male? You know, so it's frustrating.
Yeah. Also, it feels like then it's us, like we're putting our neck on the line all the time. I definitely feel like there's times where, you know, I've annoyed people because I've been that one that's I've had to call it out because I can't not. That's just like it's who I am. It's definitely like what I represent. But what we need is more males coming through and stop leaving it to all the non-males saying, no, this is the problem, because then we get the neck. It's us then being like, oh, she's that angry feminist, isn't she? Like she's got a wife, like she's a lesbian. Like maybe not. Like let's put someone else that's like, you know, less. They're going to cause less trouble, you know. And we're not here to cause trouble. We're just here to do what we love. We're just here making music. Like you're saying, it's like we're automatically political just for like being who we are, which is very strange. And I think. Yeah, I just think we need more shift in that conversation. So it's not always us being the ones that are like, hey, you know, this ain't right.
So can I just quickly add to that? I don't want to take up all the time, but it's also that thing of like, if we're the only woman on the bill and we've been given a chance to do it, right? Then what about if we do make a mistake? Yeah. Does that mean that we're representing all women, and therefore then there's this whole thing of like, oh yeah, women musicians not very good, just because, you know, not everybody's amazing all the time. You've got to make mistakes. I've made loads of mistakes, And in fact, actually, Conservatoire is a brilliant place because you can make mistakes and not necessarily be judged in the same way that you can on a professional stage. Like, you know, if I'm booking you to do a gig, I want you to be like, you know, to kill it. But if you're doing a performance in Conservatoire, you can make all those mistakes, and then when you go out into the world, you should be a bit stronger. Having said that, there are some times where creatively you're like, maybe you're not always on it because you're on a journey with the material or whatever. But women are not always allowed to make those mistakes. We'll get judged on it because, like, oh, that's what women musicians are not quite as good as men musicians, and that's why we don't book them. All of those kind of things. You guys still experiencing that? Like, you guys are much younger than me. Sorry, I'm asking the questions, but I just can't believe it's still going on. I'm like, when is this going to stop? Like, we need. Let's go and protest now. Like,
let's go. Yeah.
I think noticed if you read maybe the comment sections of females performing, there's a lot of stick there.
Seriously.
Like if they mess up, or if whoever's watching perceives they messed up, then they get it in the neck, you know. But if it was just like a male doing the same thing, you know, it's kind of overlooked. Not every time, but
quite a lot of times boys stick together, right? So
yeah.
I think also to sort of carry on from what you're saying, I think it's really interesting because I don't know whether this is just my experience, but I think there are situations that I've been in where the kind of implication's been that, but you're one of the good ones. So like I did a feedback performance and I was told afterwards, like, I really like that you were gay, but you like didn't shove it down our throats. I was like, I chose the wrong
slap
song.
Slap that person.
And
slap
I just
them.
think it's really interesting though, because my response at the time, I was like, oh, okay, like, cool. But I think there is a real expectation on us to be palatable to people. And what's really tricky is that if you're not, the expectation is on you to either apologise for that or to prove them wrong. And actually, it's about the non-women people and the men to actually step up and also be the ones to challenge misogyny and to challenge misogyny in the music industry. And I think it's what's been said so many times. It's so often left on the minoritized group to be the ones to challenge things.
And on that, I think this would be a great time if you've got a couple more songs for us.
Yeah.
Thank you, Maddie, and then we will get back to the discussion.
Pretend I know what I'm doing. The next song I'm going to sing, I'm going to sing two songs. The first one I'm going to sing is a traditional piece, and it's called Let No Man Steal Your Time, and I thought it was quite fitting for today. So a Sprig of Time was the first, it's round number 1 in the traditional sort of round collection. Is that? We're good. It's basically a piece, and the lyrics in it are kind of very much based around plant mythology, which I think is really cool. And the first time I heard it, I was like, I didn't fully get all of it. And then when I was doing my dissertation, I read up loads on historical plant mythology. And there are lines in it about things like rue, which was, when you hear it, it's like every place where your time was wasted was spread all over with rue, which just sounds like nice old language. But it's actually about rue, which was historically used for termination of pregnancies. And there are loads of kind of little references in that. And I thought it's a really interesting piece because it kind of looks at how in the past women were kind of forced to speak in code to be able to speak about things that weren't, part of the sort of dominant discourse. So that's kind of why I wanted to sing this song. I'm going to get my note. Yeah, I'm also going to sing this unaccompanied, which is a thing, yeah. Come, all you fair and tender girls that flourish in your prime. Beware, if your garden's fair. Let no man steal your time. For when your time has passed and gone,
He'll care no more for you. And every place where your time was waste will spread all over through. Will spread all over through. For woman is a branchy tree, and man a creeping vine. And from your branches carelessly he takes what he can find. He takes what he can find. The gardener's son was passing by. 3 flowers he gave to me. The red, the blue, and the violet too. And the red, red rosy tree. But I forsook that red rose bush and gained the willow tree. Now every man can plainly see how my love he spited me. Come, all you fair and tender girls that flourish in your prime. Beware, beware if your garden's fair. Let no man steal your time. Thank you.
Thanks so much. The next song I'm going to sing, and I'm just going to awkwardly scooch forward, is called The Salmon, and I wrote it about... so salmon swim against the water, and apparently it's like a mating instinct or something, but they just instinctively do it. And I thought a lot about that and how often people who are queer are kind of told, why are you doing this? Why are you making things more difficult for yourself? And my reality, at least, is that it's not something that is chosen. It's something that is just innately part of you. And so I kind of thought a lot about that metaphor about salmon and about them swimming against the current, and about that just being something that's innately about them. Even if it looks on the outside that they're making things more difficult for themselves, it's just what they do. It's just part of the way that they are. So that's kind of what this song's about, I guess.
Well, she said that she loved me, but she didn't love the hubris that I take my darkness with me until I am tied up with it. And she said that she loved me like wildflowers that grow in spring, but she can't accept the poison of traditional wedding rings. Wedding rings. I said our love, it is the same to that of man and wife. I will hold you to my chest as long as I'm living this life. She
She says their love, it is the bushes, patiently evergreen. She says, my love, you are a salmon, insistent on swimming upstream. 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 Well, she said that she loved me, but she didn't love the hubris that I take my darkness with me until I am tied up with it. And she said that she loved me like wildflowers that grow in spring, but she can't accept the poison of traditional wedding rings. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Maddie. That was so beautiful.
Thank you.
Absolutely stunning. So, Testament, I have a quick question for you. I know obviously you're very much an ally and very much present in the fight for gender equality. And I was wondering, is inclusivity something that is innately present in your work?
No. I'm aware that the work is a reflection of who I am, and I have grown up in a society which is unbalanced and sick. So I'm aware that although it's funny, music, when we were talking earlier, like in music, like having this shade of skin can sometimes, like especially starting out as a rapper, it's like, oh, he's mixed race, or he's South African, of course he can rap. He must have natural rhythm, all the rest of it. And actually that can, so some of my white brethren, certainly when you start out, you might have people in the crowd look at you a bit strange because you're not the right colours to be a rapper. Whereas it's actually when I came out of music, there were boundary and getting more into theatre and that sort of stuff and writing, where race started coming up and barriers. So on one respect, like I'm aware of that, I was aware of that, but I'm totally privileged by having A, light skin, but B, my maleness, or my male identity, whatever. So there's a whole bunch of stuff where actually I'm totally stupid and ignorant, if you like. And actually, so it's not innately in the work. In order for the work to represent what I hope it to do, which is something really positive and like makes the world slightly better, I have to do work. And I have to realise I have to do the work to work out that, I'm not going to swear, but I can miss it. And I can be oppressed on some things, but I definitely, like, in my life, I can look back on my years of my life and go, oh, I was an oppressor then. Or I totally didn't make that call to that musician that time. I missed it. And so in order to... So, like, my second theatre show that I wrote, I was like, oh, my bars, when I was doing music and doing albums and all that, all my bars talking about capitalism and inequality and rare, but never talked about gender equality. So, like a lot of my heroes, you know, listening to Chuck D or whoever, Most Def, and they're not talking about gender equality or homophobia or all that. So it's like, oh, shit, I'm a hypocrite. what are you a testament to now again? What's that? Come again? So I had to do work. So part of my practice is getting away from the addictive, the comfort of privilege, and working out how to platform people and how to make myself better. But like, before I even picked up my pen to write bars, I was like, how can we make the world a little bit nicer? And that's the same instinct, and to try and love through art. But yeah, it's practice, innit? And I'm gonna mess up. But like, it was funny. I was talking to a massively influential hero of mine who's a comedian, and he doesn't really talks about so many progressive things, but he's scared. Even he's like legitimately in the canon of great comics now. But even he's scared to be called a feminist to a certain extent, or to go and confront those issues directly in his material, even though he believes it. So like, he'll support it in other ways, but to actually expose yourself. So I think part of the work is, I've seen it in my kids, is you see what you be what you can see. To see, you've got to see it to be it, and all that. And that's an element of truth, definite strong truth in that. But then the other thing is like, what are we doing? Are we listening to these panels? Are we doing the work? Because to actually see beyond privilege, it takes work.
And that's the thing, isn't it? Like, we don't need everyone to be perfect. We need lots of people doing sort of small things that will add up to a really big result. Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, kind of on that, I was wondering, is there anyone in particular that you hope your art speaks to? Are there people you have in mind that you want to communicate your messages with?
I think it depends on the medium. Like, if I get a commission for Radio 4, I know exactly who's going to be listening to it. I can pretty much guarantee it's going to be people like my mum and dad. So, yeah, I write with the audience in mind. Whatever platform I've been given, I think, how can I stick my boot in there in a way which will get me more work, hopefully, and keep me in the conversation, but does make people feel, well, there's going to be a moment when you're going to feel like, oh, ouch. And that might be for me, writing it and performing it, to be fair. So one of the second theatre show, which was about me being a hypocrite, was a show ironically called Woke, which was about a rapper called Testament who thinks he's woke, but he's actually has sexism in his heart and needs to sort it out. But I knew when I wrote that was a show written for men, and to say, men, yeah, you say you're a feminist, but are you though? Just reading The Guardian doesn't make you a feminist. Do you know what I mean? Playing jazz doesn't make. You know what I'm saying? Playing jazz. You know, knowing your 251 don't make you a. Do you know what I mean? Does not make you a feminist. Do you know what I'm saying? So that's not. You know, being hip does not make you a feminist. So I wrote a whole show about that, and I knew it was at men, it's my probably most successful thing I've ever done, because I get emails from men saying thank you. Really? And then, yeah, still. And I also then, or from partners saying, I wish I brought my husband. But yeah, so that was like, I really want to get the Daily Mail reader who seems like a nice guy and like actually needs a little bit of a prod. Or people like me, I need a prod.
But that's amazing, isn't it? Like, we need men to go and see things like that. Like, hearing that men have then reached out to you and said, you know, I needed to see this. I think there needs to be more work like that aimed at people who maybe need to, I don't want to say change their minds a bit, but change their minds a bit.
To the unconverted.
Yeah, exactly.
It's what's really hard is like the theatre company is like, oh yeah, should we put like feminism on the flyer? And I'm like, you can do that, but that means we're just going to get Guardian readers. So, like, as well as doing that, can you also send me into this space as well, please? And can you also send me to, and also, you know what I mean? So, like, one time we played at Coventry, and the show had to stop because there was a guy in the front audience being massively chauvinistic, and like, so it almost ended up in a big dust up. But that's the work. that's the work, you know. And we didn't end up in a dust up. That's not me, is it? You know me. It's not me at all. I like faint, won't I? But like,
Man's
you
just
know,
calm. Man's just calm.
yeah, yeah, exactly. No ninja moves, just a duster. So like, but that's the work, you know. Is to empower people to go. Yeah, you know what? You're a knob, but if you start going over there, maybe things might change. What do you think about that?
It's kind of holding a mirror up to people, isn't it? And sort of, because people might not actually realise what their behaviours are or what their unconscious biases are, and then it's things like that make people go, oh my gosh, that's me. And I think we need sort of more opportunity for people to see that.
Especially if you're surrounded by people that just reaffirm your beliefs and your mentality. And, you know, but for me, that's like, you know, like I said before, all of my friends, all of the musicians I hang out with are very open-minded. But if I'm only with a bunch of people that think one way, then you're not going to grow, are you? So people need to be exposed to art that's challenging them. But hopefully bring them in, as opposed to just be like, you're bad, there's a mirror to you, now go away. But like, you know, you've got some challenges, but let's sort this out together, you know.
There is an issue as well with like, so like at the moment we've just stepped into February, but then next month will be March, International Women's Day. It's obviously going to trend, and you'll get people going, yeah man, I love my mum, International Women's Day, big up yourselves, all the women, yeah, and then nearly swore, then do nothing. Like throughout and it's like, right, well, it's I've said it a whole bunch of times, like the kind of the tokenization around like certain trending hashtags or whatever, like, you know, Black History Month or whatever. It's just very like, yeah, but what are you actually doing? Because it's one thing to put that hashtag in and then loads of eyes on it. Oh yeah, ally. It's very performative for a lot of people. So it's only when like you regularly call it out and be like, you said this, but like your for example, your lineup is completely male. So where's the? I'm not saying necessarily book your mum unless she's sick DJ. I don't know, but like where's the correlation between what you've said in order to get however many likes or whatever, and you living up to that word by putting that across in your work in other ways? Like, where is that correlation? So I'm drafting that post soon. But like those moments as well play a very important part, because like we're not tokens. Like, for God's sake, stop it. Like, we're here doing bits, so show your support.
And it's the capitalisation on identity as well, isn't it? Like your song earlier talking about, but you can buy a rainbow packet of sweets. Like, there comes those days and those months in the year when all of a sudden that specific identity, it's cool and we're going to make some money off of it now. But what about year round when it's not just profitable? Like, it's people. I think it's people, getting people involved, and they actively making people want to be involved with all different sorts of people consistently, not just when it suits companies or. Yeah,
it's very, very easy to put a hashtag and a quick, slogan, whether that's, obviously all important thing, Black Lives Matter, Me Too, whatever, but then not commit to that, like say, for the whole year, because people's level of concentration now, 60 seconds on Instagram's way too long. It's got to be 30 seconds. So maybe it's how do we approach that? Because already people are tired of looking at something for more than 60 seconds. How are we going to consistently make people embrace that in an everyday decision? Not make, I sound like a fascist, but you know what I mean? How are we going to encourage people to think about all of the choices that they make, whether it's hiring NikNak as a DJ as opposed to this other guy who both on the same level of amazingness, but making a conscious choice of actually we need to get a woman on there, rather than it just being like a fashionable thing. We'll get you on that. We'll hire you for International Women's Day, and then we'll do it again next year. So you've got a gig this year and you've got a gig next year.
Yeah, I think that it definitely needs to be like a change of mindset, which is probably going to take a while to do. But this is like a starting point, really. So it's like the thing with the all-female lineups. That doesn't need to be mentioned, as we've said before. Because it can be like a double-edged sword almost, because these people putting these events on think that they're doing something good, when in reality it's almost devaluing the skill set of people by putting a label on them.
And it segregates you from beat one, right?
Yeah, defo. And I've noticed, like, now maybe some riders and stuff, like, it has a requirement to have a female on the lineup. And 9 times out of 10, well, not all, well, I don't know how much it happens, but I know that promoters nowadays can just throw on a female on the lineup, and they might not be getting paid. It's like devaluing their skill. So it's
Tell me who these people are. Tell me who these people are. I'll have a stern word. Just tell me.
But yeah, it's kind of good because it's making that change happen, but at the same time, it's also just putting them on for the sake of it. And also another thing I wanted to say is, like, I don't want to be put on a lineup because I'm a female.
Absolutely.
I want to be put on a lineup because people like my music.
Absolutely.
That's the last thing I want.
Facts.
I think it's really tricky as well, not just in terms of like when you do gigs. I remember I did a gig once and a friend of mine, a male friend of mine, was like, "Oh, we know who the diversity candidate is." And they were like, no, I'm joking. But I think it's really easy to internalise that and begin to feel, actually, am I just here? And is it better to be just there because you tick a box, or not be there at all? And I think it's tricky as well, because I think there is also a call in a lot of situations for safe spaces. So actually, I totally understand. I hate the whole all-female lineup things, but also making a distinction between an all-female lineup and actually, I've done like queer nights before, which is spaces where that nobody's gonna get mad at you for existing. And I think there is definitely a call out for things like that and spaces like that. But I think it's really, really tricky to be an artist and to begin to internalize that thing. And every time you get a gig or a funding opportunity, you always have that question in your back of your head: did I just get that because I tick a bunch of boxes at once? Is that why I'm here? And it becomes that question of, like, am I actually doing good? Am I a good musician, or am I really convenient? And I think it's important to kind of have this discussion, but also for the folk that are only getting booked on all-female lineups, actually that's not about you as an artist. That's about the industry and the way the industry runs in itself, opposed to, I'm only being booked because I'm the diversity candidate. That's on them. That's not on you for existing, I think.
It's kind of like whatever's in fashion.
Yeah. Exactly.
Oh, you'll do it. Sound.
Yeah.
There you go.
Unfortunately, it can really make you question, your value sometimes, as a professional and as just existing. It makes you question your own worth. Sometimes, which is really unfortunate, because you're just trying to live your truth and you're just trying to be who you are and take the opportunities that are given to you, but to feel that way is awful. Maybe that would lead on to a question I wanted to ask Holly, or anyone really. What would you say to young people wanting to enter sections of music and the industry that are quite they are marginalised, like production, electronic music, jazz? Any specific pieces of advice?
I would say, if it's what you want to do, then crack on with it. I never put it at the forefront that I'm a female, because I'd think that that's kind of approaching it in the wrong way. Don't think about it too much. If it's something you want to do and you enjoy doing it, worry about that stuff. It's secondary. That shouldn't matter. At the end of the day, it's music, it's art, and there shouldn't be anything really stopping you doing it if it's what you want to do. Obviously, like, discussions like these need to be had. But yeah, I think one of the reasons that pushed me to do it, like when I first started making music when I was in school, was the fact that it was like abnormal to see a woman doing that. And I wanted to put myself in that position to be able to go and do it. So yeah, you can use it like as a motivator as well as something that can demotivate people. So use it as a motivator.
Yeah, that's true, isn't it? Because I suppose, like as we were talking about earlier, the more people you see that look like you that are doing it, the more you're going to want to go and do it. So yeah, I guess more people just actually going out and committing and saying this is what I want to do, this is who I am. That kind of paves the way for future generations to get involved. Yeah. Do you have any questions?
I mean, I was just
we got so carried away with the discussions, I completely lost the structure of what we're supposed to be doing. Coming back onto your point from earlier, I thought it was really interesting sort of drawing the distinction between, like, there's a difference between having a specific LGBTQ plus, for example, artist night, and where we're specifically showcasing, you know, people of a certain identity, of a certain background, and then saying, like, oh, we're going to chuck one of these people on the lineup because it will tick our boxes. And I think a question I have for everyone is, how can we continue to celebrate and uplift people who are marginalised in the music industry while not tokenising?
I think that's a massive question, but it's a really good one. And I think it's one that's, I think it's great that these discussions that these discussions are being had, just in the first place, because I think, I mean, like 3-4 years ago, I feel like this just wasn't happening in the same way. And I also think it is very much not just about, it's about having diversity in lineups, but not having one bit of diversity in lineups, and sort of making sure that people who are booking gigs are actively thinking. I mean, I wonder, you know, this is a live stream now. I would really, it would be fascinating to see what the gender split of people watching this is now. And actually, maybe it's about having these conversations, but instead of having them as optional live streams, having them as lectures, you know, having this conversation be an integral part of the way we educate in terms of music.
I think also, like, authenticity would come into it as well. There's something to be said about, like, the authenticity behind events, and that shine through in the lineup. It could shine through the musical choice, even down to, like, the venue itself, and it kind of, all of that can help shape what you're looking to achieve authentically with that. And just, authenticity is my favourite word.
I find it weird that, I mean, we're still having a discussion. Like I said, I've been in the business for 30 years now. But even a colleague of mine that I work with, we have a piano duet together, Zoe Rahman, amazing, phenomenal pianist. She's amazing, right? And we have a similar, not the same racial background, but we're both mixed, you know, European and Asian. And it's relevant only to the point that there have been several promoters that we've both come across over the years that have either said to her or to me, we can't give you a gig this year because we booked a Zoe Rahman last year. Right? And I'm like, or we can't book you, Zoe, because we booked Nikki last year. And it's like, hold on, we're two different people. But we might, you know, tick the same Arts Council application for you, you know, mixed, check, woman, check, la la la. But we are different people. We play different stuff. So, you know, the way we combated that is we've got a duo project. You have to book both of us every year. No, but you know. I mean, sometimes you know, your artists we're united by common experience as well. But it's still tiring for me, having done it a long time, that this still has to happen. We still have to break these walls down. And yeah, I think the only way is, like, today feels really positive. It feels like there's a beginning of just even talking to you guys. I've never met before. We've got a shared experience, but we should all keep in touch, and everybody at home keep in touch. Yeah, keep the conversation going, because it's the only way things are going to change. You know, I don't want you guys to be sitting in 30 years' time to be sitting here and, you know, having the same discussion about it. I want you to say, gosh, it was so different back then, and just really move forward. You know,
I wonder what would happen if we got, like, more, like, male promoters to have these conversations as well.
Very good point.
Because obviously, like I was saying earlier, what we've all been saying is that, you know, we can share our experiences, but I don't know, from where I'm sitting, I feel like people have kind of got that message.
Yeah, preaching to the choir.
Do you know what I mean? I feel like people are almost starting to get bored of it a bit, because they know that there's a problem. I think they're coming up against this thing of like, well, I didn't really know what to do, or their minds just are not changing and they're just still making these same, like, oh, that's awful, I'm really sorry that happened, that's terrible, that's awful, why is that happening? But I wonder if we get, I don't know how you get those promoters to have this conversation, but something like that maybe, or good promoters, like, people like Steve Mead and like Barney, and like people from festivals that are like signing up to making a change, see how, a bit like you're saying, see how they've made that change, or how they are like looking at themselves, and do you know what I mean?
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned Barney, because I was chatting to Barney about a potential project, and he was like, yeah, but how are we going to get women involved? And I was like, thank you, brother. Do you know what I mean? And it's like, the person with the purse strings is the one saying, yeah, that's cool, Testament, but what? Yeah. But if we're going to do this project, how are we going to make sure it's, so that's, I don't know if that's the exception, because I'm on the fringe of jazz, but like what I do find with is it jazz though?
Everything's jazz.
My experience in terms of diversity and the arts is like, they'll give you a slot, but it's that much. So in the theatres, it's like, yeah, we'll book your show. We'll book it for 3 days. The other show's going to come in for a month. Do you know what I mean? And all that. So it's like, tokenism by definition is like, they give you a little piece of the pie. Whereas if it's really sort of integral to what something is, it's something that always runs through it like a stick of rock. And that's what we want to see, isn't it? It's like, no, you're not just going to give us 3 days in your venue so you tick the Arts Council form, but it's actually, this is a real sea change, and of course we're all part of the furniture, and that's, we're all home here, and I think if we can get organisations to do that, then that's the next level. Next time we do this, it's promoters, right? Or venues. Yeah.
I'm actually want this conversation to go on forever, but unfortunately I think I'm going to have to hand over to Patsy now. But thank you so much. I feel like really what we've learned is that next time we need to have these conversations with, promoters. We need to be speaking to writers. We need to be, not preaching to the choir really. And it's been so amazing to talk to you all. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you.
Cheers. Thanks. Cheers. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Feels very odd that you've sat and talked there for ages, and I'm now going to stand in front of you and talk to this camera in a sort of Jerry Springer-esque style. But I'll try my best. Thanks, everybody. Thank you so much for being here with our live stream, and thank you to everybody. Can I say a really, really particular big thank you to Lucy and to Alicia, who've done a really great job keeping everybody on track. And also, of course, a really big thank you to Nikki, to Holly, to NikNak, to Lara, to Testament, and, of course, to Maddie, not only for her contribution, but her playing. So thank you so much. And thank you to all the people who've set up all of this live stream as well. I feel simultaneously excited and overwhelmed all at the same time. But what I think has been really, really fantastic to hear today is not just about the fact that there are other people who may be feeling like you are, and there are networks that you can come and talk to and be part of, and that's certainly a conversation we want to keep having in all kinds of different forums. But I think what's been really brilliant today is also that what it shows is that actually we all have the potential to do something. Lara said earlier, we've had this conversation for a really, really long time, and the next thing is to start thinking about actions. And sometimes we think about those actions as being really big. This is that Jerry Springer bit, isn't it? Sorry, I can feel it. Thanks, anyway. But I think it really is important, because we talk about those actions as being these big activities or events or things that we can do all together, and they are important, and you will see those happen. But I think what's even more important is to think about the things that we can all go away and do, the actions that actually all of us can put into every part of our lives. How can I be a better ally as much as I can be somebody who can talk about what the problems are? And what's been really great today is we've heard loads of really good, really basic examples of things that we can do that will just change our culture for the better. Things like changing our language and our terminology. Just simply changing the way in which we talk to each other will make a massive difference. So thank you. Thank you so much for being here. It's been genuinely really excellent. And to be here 3 years later after the launch of Elevate, this is a good start. So it just falls to me to say that if you want to find out any more about our F-List social media takeover, you can do that through Instagram, and you'll find the handles if you go to Instagram and search for either Leeds Conservatoire or the F-List music. We also have a Women of Elcon, Women of the Leeds Conservatoire playlist, which has some of these amazing people on it, and you can find that either through Spotify or through our Instagram channel, so please do engage. And everybody who's on the panel, we've tried to include in all of that information, so make sure that you follow them and engage with their work as well. We really would love to see people finding and making new connections as part of this event as well. Last thing is I'm going to hand over to Maddie, who's going to finish off with 2 more fantastic songs. Thank you so much for spending the afternoon with us. And if you have any feedback or any questions about the event, you can do that through the social media channels. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I'm going to play 2 songs. I'm going to awkwardly scooch forward as well. And the first song is, I was really into Greek myth for a little bit, and there is a goddess in Greek myth called Philomena, and she was assaulted by, I want to say, Hades, but I'm not 100% sure. Anyway, he's not important. She basically, he assaults her, and then he cuts her tongue out, and then turns her into a swallow. Proper. He's the worst. But what's really sad is that's her whole story. Like in the whole of, that's all there is about Philomena, is this horrific thing that happens to her, and then she creates all these beautiful tapestries, kind of telling her story. And I wrote a song about that. Yeah, so that's what this is about. And yeah.
Oh God, I miss the tongue of mine, the speech, the words, soft sipping wine. Now a story of the past, days of more than overcast. And oh, the wind feels soft beneath the set of feathered wings, but I can't change the world if all that I can do is say, dum dum da 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 dum 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 dee dum dum. When historians talk about me, they talk of etymology, of Terius's anger, and bruises forming underneath his fingers aren't what taunt me. The melodies, they won't remain unsung. What keeps me up is his tongue. But what is a bird without her song? And what is a woman without her tongue? And who is the king without violence or threat? And the fear that you are next.
to know too well, I guess, the irony of such awful things. In truth, the female nightingale is mute, only the male one sings. Thank you. Thanks. It's so cool to be here and to have been asked to do this today. The last song I'm going to sing is about Marsha P. Johnson, who is like, oh, cool, yeah, great. This is the dream. So Marsha P. Johnson was kind of like one of the key people in the Stonewall riots. If you're watching you at ELCOM, I'm doing a lecture about this on Thursday, and it should be available at Panopto for everyone because she's really cool. She's an activist in the Stonewall riots, and she was a black trans woman. And it's really sad. We don't get taught this at school, and for a lot of queer people, their experiences that you kind of have to find your own history. And I wrote this piece, firstly about Marsha, because I like to have songs about her because I feel like not enough people know her name. But also kind of about that feeling that I feel like if you're big in like activism, there's that feeling that you can't be enough, you can never do enough. So I wrote this song firstly also about that feeling and being like, okay, I'm not Marsha, but how can I be as much like her, and what can I do in my life in the day-to-day to be more like this person that I'm able to sit here safely and talk about because of. So yeah, this is Marsha P. I'm just going to very quickly tune this top string so that I don't sound like horrific. That's better. Yeah, that should be fine now. Well, I'm not Marsha P, but I swear if I could be, I would wage a war for women that look like and unlike me. We're taught to take it on the chin like a manifesto of our skin, whilst we're screaming out for picket lines that wouldn't let us in. Did you hear them on the news last night? More bloodshed on the picket lines, and the journalists chose not to say what their protest was for. The Prime Minister is murmuring same shit about austerity, and they're blurring out the hashtags and the name of the war. And it violates the community guidelines on the website, so they're blacking out the hashtags and the artwork for good measure. And they say that it's for our own good, let's not instigate civil unrest. But the lack of a single statement becomes the cabinet's grandest gesture. Wish I was more like Marsha P, putting myself on the line to create liberation for bodies that look like and unlike mine. We're taught to take it on the chin like every scar upon our skin, whilst we're screaming out for picket lines that wouldn't let us in. I went to my first Pride parade when I was just 13 years old. My dad told strangers he was gay 'cause I was scared they'd guess it were me. I met a lady in a purple tent. She gave my arms temporary tattoos. She says, this is the life you've got, even though it's not the one you choose. And 10 years later, I'd compost every homophobe and grow flowers in their graves. Maybe greenery would ease the burden of all the queer children that nobody saves. And maybe this time we'll go up their escalators, play Britney in their lobbies, turn on the AC for a moment, remind them the smell of human bodies. And maybe everyone will cast their votes and get someone like us behind a screen. Maybe propaganda will subside and we can remember what democracy means. And maybe my rainbow might mean liberation again, not just more random stuff they can sell. But the chances of these maybes are dying, and the corpse of those chances is starting to smell. Wish I was more like Marsha P. And if I could be, I would wage a war for women that look like and unlike me. We're taught to take it on the chin, like all the shame for so-called sin, whilst we're screaming out for picket lines that didn't let us in. Thank you.
Yeah.